How much pressure should there be on the Cincinnati Bearcats to follow up the Reds' recent winning streak? FC Cincinnati still has a home match winning streak going, and the Bengals had a 10-game winning streak last year. Man, there shouldn't be any pressure. All there should be is motivation for the Bearcats to have winning streaks of their own.
You are Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. It's free and available wherever you listen to podcasts, including if you watch us on YouTube. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and follow us to get an alert every time that we drop a new episode. My name is Alex Frank, your host each and every day here on Locked On Bearcats. We're, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Tuesday, June 27th. We are just four days away from the Bearcats being Big 12 members. And what a fantastic weekend for the Cincinnati Reds. I know they lost 2 out of 3. I know they took the first game, which was one of the best games I've ever watched. And then they lost the next 2. But you have to acknowledge they just went toe-to-toe with the best team in the National League. And every game that they have lost to the Braves this season has been by 1 run. Now, the winning streak came to an end. But I was thinking over the weekend, if there's any pressure on the Bearcats, after what the Reds did, after what the Bengals did last year winning 10 straight, after what FC Cincinnati has done and is still doing this season with 10 straight home match victories, undefeated in their last 10 home matches. And I got to thinking, does that put any pressure on the Bearcats football program, men's basketball program to start a winning streak of their own? And to me, the answer should be yes, but I think in a good way. And there's this lesson, not only in sports, but in life, motivation versus intimidation. And personally, I think it's psychological. I think you're either motivated or you're intimidated. And if you're intimidated, you don't have any chance. Motivation is a great thing in life. And I think if the Bearcats, who have winning traditions, and it's what drew Scott Satterfield to this job, as he explained at the Day One tour back in May, Wes Miller was drawn to the winning tradition of the Bearcats men's basketball program. He talked about it as such extensively in his introductory press conference 2 years ago. So Scott Satterfield and Wes Miller, who are the 2 central figures of the Bearcats athletic department, they know the winning tradition in this city. And therefore, I think they are going to lead their programs to successful seasons. And given that and the other thing that I think about, and Rick Eugenio talked about this. He talked about this after the Reds won, I believe, their second straight game. Their second straight game of their 12-game winning streak. Rick Eugenio talked about this. If you haven't heard Rick Eugenio, he's on 700 WLW. He hosts occasionally Reds Extra Innings. Kelce Chevrolet Extra Innings. So Rick Eugenio was talking a few weeks ago about the momentum that not only the Reds have right now, but the entire city of Cincinnati. And in my lifetime in particular, there's never been a time where every team has been this good. And there has never been a time where there is a forged connection between the 5 major programs: Bearcats, Xavier, FC Cincinnati, Reds, Bengals. And I get it, there's a civic division between Cincinnati and Xavier. But personally, and I was talking with someone about this during March Madness, and I asked them, I said, do you find yourself rooting for Xavier? And they told me that they wanted to see the city do well. And now, was I rooting for Xavier? No. But I was rooting for the city to do well. And I do believe that this city is the success of the Bengals the last 2 years, the momentum the Reds have, what FC Cincinnati is doing after a very, very good season last year, what the Bearcats have as far as aspirations and expectations once they joined the Big 12, particularly on the basketball front after a very, very solid offseason when it comes to the transfer portal and recruiting. You have to think that the momentum that exists within the Cincinnati Bearcats program is enough to create a motivation to win that we have not seen from an overall city standpoint since when? The late 80s, early 90s? From 1988 through 1992, you had a Super Bowl appearance, a World Series title, and a Final Four berth, which is all very good. But what has been done since 1992? No Final Fours. 2021 was great because the Bearcats went to the college football playoff. The Bengals went to the Super Bowl. But the momentum that this city has, it's going to be around for a long time. And I want there to be conflict. When you have a Sunday Bengals game and the Reds playoff game at the same time, what the heck are you going to do? Like, Boston's had that dilemma several times. Philadelphia had that dilemma last year. We've never had that in Cincinnati. We've never had it. We've had instances where the Bengals and Reds play on the same day, not because the Bengals were playing in prime time. The same day, that's great. But there is just a sense of forged connection that exists right now within this city that I have not seen in a very, very long time. And maybe in my lifetime ever. You've got Bengals players taking batting practice with the Reds. You've got Reds players showing up to FC Cincinnati. You've got Bengals players showing up to Bearcats men's basketball games last year. So the momentum that the city has right now is incredible as the sports scene goes professionally. Now, the Bearcats have a new head coach in football. I do think there's going to be some growing pains, but there is a winning tradition that has been established over the last 25 plus seasons. And I asked Scott Satterfield that question exactly at the day one tour. And he said that yes, that there is pressure to continue that winning tradition. And I also think about men's basketball, who for 14 years ran this city. A college basketball program ran this city. Now, yes, the Reds were still mighty popular because they made the playoffs in 95. They had some good teams after that. Griffey joined the team in 2000. I mean, you want to talk about, but you want to talk about the success of Bearcats men's basketball. When the Reds declined after 2000, when the Bengals were still in their lost decade, there wasn't a Major League Soccer team here. Bearcats football was an afterthought. There's never been a time when all five programs, Bearcats football, Bearcats men's basketball, FC Cincinnati, Reds, Bengals, have all been good. Now, if you're talking overall Cincinnati, you want to throw Xavier in there. There's never been a time when all six, I should say, have been good. But now you feel like there is. The Bearcats have a great thing going in the hardwood. Wes Miller's done an unbelievable job resurrecting the program. I don't believe the rebuild is complete yet, but I do believe they're heading in the right direction. Bearcats football, it remains to be seen if the rebuild is going to take longer than we hope. The Bengals, I mean, look what they've done the last 2 years. They've played for AFC Championship games the last 2 seasons. The Reds just went on a 12-game winning streak. And at the time of this recording, they're still in first place. FC Cincinnati has not lost a home match in the last 10 overall. So again, we talk about the forged connection that exists between this city and its sports teams. It's as strong as it's ever been. Especially when the Reds, who are baseball's oldest professional franchise, and yes, when the Bengals were in their Super Bowl run 2 years ago, and when they were in their AFC title game run last year, they took over the city. But when the Reds are in a pennant race, they can grab you and just they just grab your attention, and it is a phenomenal month of September. I am almost late for this, I don't want to say break because we don't take breaks in this podcast, but with the Reds' 12-game winning streak, I got to thinking about notable Bearcats winning streaks, and I will share some of them that I have come up with, and I want to hear from you about them. We'll do that next on Locked On Bearcats. But first, I'm here to tell you how this episode of Locked On Bearcats, not how, this episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to join today. So don't miss your chance to snag a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel is an official partner of Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball trademarks used with permission. Thank you for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. We celebrate the everyday listener on this show. And for you everyday listeners who make us your first listen every single day, never miss an episode, Russ Helbin will hopefully be joining me tomorrow, my colleague at All Bearcats and Sports Illustrated, to discuss with me the Bearcats' pressure to win in the Big 12 and notable Bearcats winning streaks. Maybe I missed something that Russ has, and the impact of the Reds' 12-game winning streak and the Bearcats' pressure to win. So, the Reds' 12-game winning streak was fun, rejuvenating. It was, I think for me, and I thought Jason Williams put it perfectly on 700 WLW recently. Saturday night, actually, after the winning streak was snapped, when he talked about how what the Reds did was they sort of recaptured your love for the Reds. And that's how it felt for me. Well, now I feel like I have to rearrange my entire schedule every day to watch the Reds. And is it stressful? Is it different? Is it not what I'm used to? Yes. But at the same time, like, you never know what you're going to see every night from this ball club. And that's what is something I really love about this Reds team. So the Cincinnati Reds, or Bearcats, excuse me. This is a Daily Bearcats podcast. And I got to thinking about notable Bearcats winning streaks over the years. And there are a handful. I mean, there are several. I think the one most notably that comes to my mind is the Bearcats' 33-game winning streak at home. Was it? Now I'm all of a sudden forgetting. Well, it might have been now. It might have been 32. But anyway, well, actually, we can go through it. It's either 32 or 33, and it was 32 straight home wins. And when I think about that, yes, you can say they played in the American, but at the same time, keep in mind the first 2 years where that winning streak existed, 18 and 19. 2018, we didn't really know who the Bearcats were going to be. They had to come back from around 21-0 against Ohio. They had to hold off a pesky Tulane team. They had to hold off a USF team that was supposed to be good, but ended up losing their last 6 games of the regular season and bowl game. And then in 2019, they had to play UCLA at home. I don't care how much better the Bearcats were than them. It was still a home game against a Pac-12 team. And the Bearcats were a program at the time that weren't fully established yet, but you really liked where the program was going. So there's this sense of that winning streak may not be impressive to you, but to me it is. Desmond Ridder never lost a home start. There is a class of UC graduates who never saw a home loss in their academic careers. That's special to you. It should be. And so I think about that. And I also think about the COVID season when you didn't have fans and you had to create your own energy. And then the conference championship game had to hold off Tulsa. Had to hold off Tulsa again in 21. And then the conference title game. How much fun that was. And then all the nail-biting home games last year with a lesser talented team and arguably against more talented teams in the American like East Carolina, and you still found a way to win those games. Like, those are significant wins. They beat Indiana by 21. You don't lose a home game for almost 5 years. You go from the Saturday after Thanksgiving in 2017 to Black Friday in 2022 without losing a home game. That's pretty dang good. Let's talk about 9 straight NCAA tournament appearances under Mick Cronin, 14 straight under Bob Huggins. For a program that really, after 1963, when they lost to Loyola Chicago in the national championship, they found a way to make the tournament 14 straight years. And they weren't playing in Power 5 conferences. They were playing in the Great Midwest Conference, Conference USA. And the dominance that they showed in the regular season, the winning the conference tournament 4 straight years in the Great Midwest, and then winning it 4 times in the Conference USA, to get to the tournament. And I know the lack of March success still draws the ire of some Bearcat fans. But when you think about going to the NCAA tournament 14 straight years, going back to that topic I did earlier this offseason, most underrated program in men's basketball history, like, yes, you're going to have, some fans say, well, they never did anything. You go 14 straight years, and then the 9 straight NCAA tournament appearances, you know who's not in that list? Kentucky's not on that list. Wichita State's not on that list. UCLA's not on that list. Only 6 schools, went to 9 straight NCAA tournaments from 2011 to 2019. UConn can't say they did. Louisville can't say they did. The only schools who can say they did are Cincinnati, Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, Michigan State, and Gonzaga. Not even Michigan can say they did. There are elite programs. Villanova can't even say they did. Villanova can't even say they went to 9 straight NCAA tournaments. Bearcats can say they did. And that's another streak I think about. I think about the 5 straight years the Bearcats have made a bowl game, going for a record 6th. I think about winning 2 straight undefeated regular seasons. Hard to do, especially in a COVID season. And then the next season where all the expectations were on your shoulders. I think about those. I think about Jaron Cumberland and his junior season and just how great of a player he was. His senior season, I'm always going to wonder what could have been. But as far as his junior season, that was Jaron Cumberland at his finest. Jaron Cumberland in 2019, and these numbers are ridiculous. You go back to, if I have his season stats, which I don't have in front of me. That's weird. Well, anyway, if you want to go back and look at his seasons, particularly 2019, which I wish I had them in front of me because they were so good. 18.8 points per game. I'm looking to see if there's game logs, which there should be. Yes, there is. Okay, here we go. So in 2019, there was a stretch starting with really the whole season. But starting with, we'll say, USF, when he scored 34 points. You go 18, 23, 25, 24, 17, 27, 27. So that in there includes a 3-game streak of 23 or more points. You've got 34 points in there. Earlier in the season, you have a 27, a 25. You have 21, 25 back-to-back games against Xavier Mississippi State and then UCLA when he scored 25 points. But even go back to his sophomore season when he became this team's best player. If you look at the end of that season, when he goes over his last 8 games, he goes 18, 7, 17, You have an 18 in there, a 27 in the NCAA tournament. His assist numbers are also very good. 8.5, 8.5. I mean, just spectacular numbers. And always so consistent when you talk about double-digit scoring. Michael Warren. He had a touchdown in what felt like every game of 2018. I think he had a touchdown every game, if my memory serves me correct. A touchdown in every single game. And you think about other streaks that have happened in Cincinnati. The 2009 season. Running the table. Or whether it be the Bearcats getting off to an undefeated start in 2012 through 2013. Or whether it be the Bearcats winning their final, I think it was 4 conference games in 2017-18, then their first 12 games in conference play. 16 straight wins. These are winning streaks that matter, and they should matter. And you think about winning streaks from the Bob Huggins era. And you think about Bearcats volleyball, Jordan Thompson, the streak she had. And you think about Bearcats baseball and the winning streak they went on to win the the American Athletic Conference tournament. And they won 4 games in 4 games in 4 days? Yeah, 4 games, not in 4 days. They won 4 games, then they beat Oregon State. That magical March run. How about the when the women's basketball went on their Elite Eight run in the women's NIT? And I'm throwing winning streaks out there at this point, but the point I'm trying to make here is the fact that there are streaks within the Bearcats. You just got to sometimes look a little harder. But what football did with their home winning streak, there was a time when Bearcats men's basketball won 39 straight home games. And yeah, some of those came at BB&T Arena while Fifth Third was being renovated, but still, you defended your home court. And those are all great winning streaks. All right, I want to finish with this topic because I really got to thinking about this, particularly on Sunday. Are any of you starting to view Travis Kelce and his legacy as a Cincinnati Bearcat in a different way? And I'll tell you why you maybe are next on Locked On Bearcats. The most interesting element to the Bengals-Chiefs rivalry, and we're going to talk about UC rivalries later this week and rivalries that could form now that they're going to the Big 12. But the fascinating thing about the UC rivalry, or the Bengals-Chiefs rivalry, is that Travis Kelce played for the Cincinnati Bearcats. And yet, if you've listened to anything that he has said, not just this offseason, but obviously what he said after the AFC Championship game to Jim Nantz on the podium, you would feel like that he has some sort of, I don't know what you call it, resentment, grudge, sort of just I don't know what you call it. But Travis Kelce has, I'm going to be honest, he has caused a stir in the media. And I remember Chad Brendel last year. And I say this because given what Travis Kelce said, if you heard what he said last week, I'm not going to say it because I don't feel it's appropriate on this podcast, but what Travis Kelce said back to Jamar Chase. Now, if you read the quote, you might view him as a villain. If you listen to what he says on the New Heights podcast he hosts with his brother Jason Kelce, also a former Bearcat, it's really no big deal. It's no big deal what he said. It's also no big deal what he said after the AFC Championship game, calling the mayor of Cincinnati, I don't know if I should use this word on this podcast. You remember what he said on the podium. You would think he's a villain. But remember he's a Cincinnati Bearcat. And remember that he is a very proud Bearcat. And remember that he is a great ambassador for the university. Chad Brendel on ESPN 1530 last year. So there was a game the Chiefs played on Sunday Night Football against the Chargers. Travis Kelce had 3 touchdowns, which followed a Monday night game where he had 4. And I remember Chad saying that next day, is there a greater ambassador for the University of Cincinnati than Travis Kelce? And it goes much further than that he's the best tight end in the NFL, playing for the best team in the NFL with 2 Super Bowl rings, and is arguably the greatest tight end maybe the greatest tight end to ever play the game, and maybe the greatest postseason performing tight end I've ever seen. Maybe we've ever seen. It's the fact that he played 4 years. It's the fact that he was drafted in the 2nd round, which at a time was a huge deal at the University of Cincinnati. Then Sauce Gardner came along. And so all he's done, and he used to be one of these tight ends that was overlooked because who are your top tight ends? Jimmy Graham, Jason Witten. Who else was Gronkowski, of course. Excuse me. But the point I'm trying to make here is Travis Kelce was good even when Alex Smith was the Chiefs quarterback. And look at him now. But given all that he has done, and given the fact that the Bengals and Chiefs are the best rivalry in the NFL, and maybe the best rivalry right now in sports, which might be a stretch, but I'm saying that it's one of the premier rivalries in sports right now. And the fact that Travis has been very vocal in the media, taking shots back at Jamar Chase, taking shots back at Cincinnati Mayor Aftab Hirval, it does kind of make you think, could he be becoming a villain? Because he's so good, but because you're a Bearcats fan and you're also a Bengals fan, if you look at it from the Bengals fan side, you might view him as a villain. Now, I don't personally view him that way. I view him as a really good player that you may not like because you don't like the Chiefs. That's totally okay. You probably feel the same way about Patrick Mahomes. But I will say this. It is really interesting to me that one of the rivalry's key characters, and if you did, and I was talking to my cousin about this on Sunday, I said to him, if you make a list of the top 10 players in the Bengals-Chiefs rivalry, 1 and 2 are obvious. Who do you put at 3? Now, he told me this. You got to think, are you thinking when they play each other or in general? In general, I'm taking Travis Kelce. When they play, Jamar Chase has made a much bigger impact than Travis Kelce. So it is really interesting, though. One of the rivalry's key characters is maybe becoming a villain. And because of what he's saying, and because he plays for the team who beat the Bengals last year in the AFC Championship game, but this is a former Bearcat who we're talking about being the greatest ever at his position when all is said and done. By the way, he's only played 10 seasons, and we could see him for many more seasons. Jason Witten played 15 plus. So the point I'm trying to make here is maybe what he has said has caused you to view him a little differently. But that shouldn't change the fact that this is a former Bearcat who has a tremendous amount of love and passion for the university. Maybe just, I don't know. But I do think that you shouldn't view him as a villain. But if you look at it from a Bengals fan side, because again, a lot of Bearcat fans I know are Bengal fans. And I think you might view him as a villain. But what has he done? Other than be great. Take shots. Travis Kelce is not one to take shots before someone else does. And Travis Kelce, like any skill player would or should, he sticks up for his quarterback. I mean, he sticks up for Patrick Mahomes. He and Patrick Mahomes are the best tandem outside of maybe Burrow and Chase in the NFL. Travis Kelce last year had to be the guy in the receiving corps, and he's a tight end, and was. So just because he's taking shots at Jamar Chase and whoever else in the media does not mean that he should be viewed any differently than he is now. All right, that's going to do it for today. That was a fun episode. That was really fun. Thank you, as always, for making us Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. On tomorrow's show, Russ Hellman will hopefully be joining me, my colleague at All Bearcats and Sports Illustrated, talking about Bearcats winning streaks of the past, talking about the pressure to win in the Big 12 with just 4 days remaining until the Bearcats are officially members in the Big 12. Don't forget the Bearcats Bash on Friday at Ryan Geist Brewery from noon to midnight as we count down to the Big 12 officially being the new home of the Cincinnati Bearcats. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Frankie_90 with 2 N's and an ATI, Instagram AlexFrank_9_ and then email alex3frank@gmail.com. Looking forward to being here tomorrow with you as we draw closer and closer to being members of the Big 12. I'm Alex Frank for Locked On Bearcats. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, as you see on the YouTube thumbnail. Don't forget to make Locked On Sports Today your second listen. Peter Bukowski, who also hosts Locked On Packers, brings you the biggest stories of the day in the world of sports in 22 minutes or less. He does a fantastic job on that show. Have a great rest of your, was it Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. I'm back tomorrow here on Locked On Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.